Hi, I'm Keionna Thomas, Program Coordinator for BRAIDEd with the Eco-Womanist Institute Southeast, and this is BRAIDEd. Welcome to BRAIDEd, a podcast by the Eco-Womanist Institute Southeast, where we dig deep into the soil of justice, equity, and the policies shaping the future of Black farmers and land stewards across the South. I'm your host and BRAIDEd Program Coordinator, Keionna Thomas, and today we're planting seeds of truth around the intersection of policy, racial justice, and economic opportunity in agriculture. Joining us today is Cicely Garrett, a creative strategist and social entrepreneur whose work spans racial equity, environmental justice, food sovereignty, and community wealth building. As co-executive director of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance and a sought-after facilitator and thought leader, Cicely brings deep expertise in strategy, resilience, and systems change across the South. Her leadership has shaped initiatives from Resilient Atlanta to the Black and Green Agenda, and we're honored to have her voice in this conversation today. We're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, the Farm Bill, and why Black farmers are shifting from coming to get our check to how we can build our own systems of sovereignty while demanding accountability. Thank you for being with us today. Let's start with getting to know a bit more about your current work. As co-executive director, you work closely with the National Black Food Justice Alliance, a powerful network advancing Black food sovereignty and land justice. How has your work with the Alliance shaped your vision for community-led policy change? And what impact do you see it having on the ground right now?
Yes, thank you for having me. So I've been with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance about 5 years. And Alliance is a coalition of over 60 Black-led organizations and cultivators rooted in the legacy of cooperative survival and resistance, working across land defense, food sovereignty, as well as organizing and policy advocacy. Cornerstone of our work at National Black Food and Justice Alliance is self-determination and ensuring that we are both amplifying and investing in Black leadership and a community's ability to determine what it is that is next for them. And so it is not that we don't feel that there are things owed to us or that have been stolen that we want to reclaim or rematriate, but we aren't waiting for Superman to come save us or the state. And so within that, while you are also leveling demands and having requirements of other people, we also couple that with building power outside of federal dependency, as well as building institutions that more accurately reflect the future we want to see and the culture we came from, and centering us as people within that. So we don't have to be dependent on things while also holding people accountable for past transgressions such as USDA and Congress to the debts that they owe us.
Awesome. So let's talk policy a little bit. The Inflation Reduction Act was positioned as a major win, but many in our communities are still left behind. What do we need to understand about what's in the bill, and more importantly, what's not?
Yeah, I think just even taking a step back from that, I don't think at the Alliance that we largely center the state and federal in our work and as a centerpiece of a solution. It is a factor, but I will say that I don't know this country and the way the system was set up was ever actually designed for us. And centering that, even if it's not your focus, then still always makes them a focus. You're fighting against something instead of moving towards something. And we have farm bill demands. We have a part that does it, but we also spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about what should be. And while we are in great times of turmoil and discourse and uncertainty, it also presents a great opportunity for us to be thinking about we can't go back. Like there is no time machine. It'll never be November 6th, 5th again. But how is it we move forward, and how do we ensure that no matter what is going on, that what comes next is actually something that we want to invest in and build and that benefits us, and not some other underperforming system that was never designed for us. And so things like the Inflation Reduction Act that were touted as this great win on paper, didn't live up to the muster in actual practice. And so how can we ensure that the world and the place that we are living in both honors us in both practice and on paper? And so what does that look like? And so one of the major parts of the Inflation Reduction Act that was originally born out of the American Reduction Plan was that there was going to be debt relief for a lot of older Black farmers who've been doing this for a long time, who had been sold terrible loans or either denied access to loans and just discriminated against for a long time. That was one of the first things that got repealed. And so they spent months and months arguing and going back and forth and through legalese, people becoming insolvent, actually further making them worse off than what they were before. And then I think these times are also showing who did and did not benefit from that based on who has lost funding from it. And I'm not saying that it has not tremendously impacted the Black community, but not to the level it has some of our white counterparts. And $26 billion of that went out quickly from the 2020 pandemic, and mostly to white farmers for relief. Black farmers were still told that they needed to wait. There was lots of vague and just indeterminate implementation language in it that allowed a lot of the loopholes once the funds got to the state for it not to end up where it is. We live in Georgia as a true red state. I know for a fact that many of those funds didn't end up in the hands of where they were supposed to with the intention in which it left the federal. So it wasn't a win for us. Delaying justice is still justice denied. Like, people had already waited decades to write the system and then were told to wait again. And then once again, we had to step up and fill the hole. And so you had groups and other organizations that came together and did like the Safe House Fund. It was us and a coalition of several other organizations like Pot Liquor and Jubilee Justice and Southern Federation of Cooperatives and Mama Savvy at Land Loss Prevention in North Carolina. We all get together and was like, we need to be the safety net. It's up for us to fill this whole void. But yeah, I think we can still hold people accountable, but I don't think that we can put all of our eggs in that basket. We definitely couldn't. We didn't do it before, and we definitely cannot do it now because we are in a whole nother move and era of which the government is no longer the safety net or the standard or the person being able to regulate the others.
Yeah, and you bring us back to 2020 and even to November of 2024 when you mention these things. And there's even a historical thread connecting the current Farm Bill to the legislation of 1968, a time of civil rights unrest and rising in Black political power. What lessons from 1968 do you think are being repeated or ignored today in agricultural policy?
Yeah, I think that there's always been a posture about the incremental change is still change. Like, it's moved some of the needle. But what you ended up with was a lot of concessions and I think some watered down reforms that still allowed white majority to maintain control. And I don't even know if they're majority in population, but white control over land and resources. And so while it gave us the appearance of progress and some access to some resources, it still didn't get us to the point that we really want to be with like justice and liberation. Having that involved means that you don't have to have someone else involved. That's real self-determination in determining your future. But we were still having to come to the piper or the grand wizard to request a lot of things. So I did bring in some resources, but not nearly enough to mitigate the past nor set us up for the future. And so it was just less than. And so I think we could also pivot and hearken to some other things in the past, like from the 1890s, like we could do heirs property reform. The amount of land, although land can't be lost, is still there, but the amount of land that we are losing just from lack of heirs property reform, lack of land use laws that reflect where we are in today is just tremendous outside of the other things or how people are using current policies around that to force people off land. And just having stronger equity mandates. I feel like if anything we learned from 2020 and people feel like people are shifting out of fear, I don't think that people are shifting out of fear, because if you are really committed to something and if people were really committed as much as they say they were to Black Lives Matter and to equity and Black and brown people, you don't jump ship as quick as we've seen. We aren't even a year into this. Because if you did and you really understood what you were committing to, you knew the risk involved. You knew that this was a long-term thing. You knew what might come. Even if we could have never imagined this, we also accept a certain amount of that this isn't going to be for everyone and this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. And so with that, you should be unfettered when encountering some resistance, even resistance that seems so unfathomable and tremendous as this. So that's why when people called and asked, what were we going to do? We're going to change our website or do other stuff. For what? Like, I was already called the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. Like, we got into this from a different perspective of being quite clear about what our North Star is and what our goal is. And so that didn't change because now there's someone who is saying the quiet parts out loud and totally pushing an agenda. The work that we still had to do still exists there. If now it's even more important than what it was before. But this wasn't something for the faint at heart where now we were going to jump off this ship just because it got tough. Like, we knew going into this, it was. Like, there probably weren't going to be a lot of wins early on, and we were going to have to endure some things. But quite frankly, our survival and our future depended on it. And so knowing that we weren't swayed by the other things, it is a peaceful confidence and a quiet in the midst, in the eye of a storm that is really hard, I think, for people to translate who don't understand or just don't have the same level of commitment and just groundedness in this. And so I don't know that I saw or is so shocked at the shift. I thought it was always going to come. I just think with the onset of this administration, it was hastened. But I think it was well in the progress before then, because even at the time when it was at the heights, people still didn't meet the commitments that they had publicly made, and that's when no one was watching. So what are we going to do now that no one was watching? And not only is no one watching, they were actually encouraging it. And so it's things like that we have to be wary of, and the motivations by who it is that we are asking for some level of atonement. If we don't share the same values, if we aren't centering the same things, it is very hard for us to end up in the same place. And so asking for a certain level of absolution or just trustworthiness from people in a different place, it just feels like an unrealistic expectation that they will end up on the right side if left to their own devices.
And thank you for your commitment to this work and being someone who can help keep those around you grounded. As you mentioned, that is the most important part to keeping us moving forward. Moving a bit more away from the policy side and touching more on that shift that you mentioned, I think before we saw a lot of people pushing toward the coming to get our check, whereas now people are moving away from the money that was owed on the state level and exploring ways to create our own systems. How do you see those priorities shifting? And most importantly, how can we move from slogan to strategy in this fight for economic justice?
Yeah, I won't say that I don't think that people were wrong in some ways about coming to get our check, because there are lots of things that have been stolen that I think should be returned. I think now it's a shift and it's not about waiting for a payout. It was a slimmer expectation before, and now it's probably almost nil to none. I think it's more about demanding a return of what's been stolen. That includes like land, wealth, opportunities. Because I don't know that anyone was ever asking for a handout. Quite frankly, we're just asking you to get out of our way and also to stop deterring us from progress. If you did all those things, then I think people would just be fine. I'm a strong believer that people always know what's best for them and will thrive if given the right tools. But not only were we not provided the same tools, but then also forces working against that. And so I think once people have the land, wealth, opportunities, and then you can transform that into a strategy that like really gives structural change. I think we were given handouts. I think we were given performative things that were just meant to be Band-Aids but could never really sustain. And so there were a few of us who would make it. I'm not saying that there weren't some people who didn't find success, but it was never meant to really see a whole group of people get free. I'm not just trying to get free. My salvation is a part of this too. I want us all. I feel like a win for anyone. I don't actually see it as sad if some other organization gets funding and we don't. Like, it is funding the movement of who we are. And so I want to see all of us progress, not just some of us. I don't want to see any more articles about the first to do something. Like, why shouldn't we all be there? So I think we're not just coming for the check. I think it's people are coming for the land, people are coming for justice, for the future that like we've been building all along. Like, we've been here. We just didn't get asked here. Y'all didn't bring us over here some charity thing. You brought us here to help build and to sustain a nation that you couldn't do without us. But just having money without systemic change is in some ways just hush money. Like, we aren't trying to be a kept pet on the side. Like, we've all seen what happens when people just have money and you have no direction or no passion. and no guidance about what that is. So I think it's more than that. And it's up for us to become more organized as a people, even with or without the resources, and coupling demands with like institution building. And that means co-ops, land trust, agroecology centers, legal defense infrastructure, the things that we know that we are missing that help us build and fortify the institutions and then see them thrive and to be able, and I don't like the word scalable because not everything is meant to be big, but duplicate it in other places and other communities and people can see themselves and it doesn't take 5-10 years to do each thing or to move along the steps. And I will say one of the best things I saw about when I came to the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, like the organization has been around for 10 years. But I often tell people, I feel like we're going to kindergarten in some ways as an organization if you're talking about in terms of like actual resources and infrastructure, and by resources, external. But I think intellectual resources around people who are committed to values and a movement been rich in since the beginning. And so the members were doing the work. They were organizing, they were planning, they were strategizing about how they could feed their communities, protect land, and creating alternative economies when there wasn't anything. There wasn't some way to fund it. Other people weren't paying attention. They weren't being written about. And that, I think, is invaluable and something that you can't duplicate and you can't manufacture with a certain amount of money. And that is where our strength lies. Like, we've survived so many things. Why wouldn't we survive this as well, even with such great forces working against us? And so our greatest asset has been us. And I think we need to double down and invest in that.
Absolutely. And at Eco Womenist Institute Southeast, the collective movement really is the center of what we're working on, particularly with our BRAIDEd program. And as we wrap up our interview today, if you have any final words of wisdom or advice as we prepare to bring on our first cohort of Black women in agriculture to help and guide them as they begin this learning process and really learn around the collective growth model.
Yeah, I would say never think about yourself as the alternative to what is. 70% of the world's land stewards are women. And when you look and draw down in other suggestions of things that could save the world and the earth, within the top 10, over half of them involve women and education and land. And so if you are already rooted in that, then I feel like there's nothing that you can't do. Don't let the world's perception or the amount of socialized patriarchy that we've grown up in limit where you're going and what your heights could be. Part of this is also Black joy and also having the space to be able to dream. And that is what keeps us in a place. And so always make space for that. And not just to think about, we're not asking for handouts. What you are do and what you don't need permission to do is making demands to come and reclaim the harvest that you've been sowing. People before you have been sowing this, before you came along. Like, my grandmother planted seeds. I don't know that she graduated high school, so I could be in this position as her first granddaughter to do the things that I did. And so lots of people walk before you. We're planting seeds for those coming. And so even when things stall, don't let that deter you. Keep planting, keep organizing, keep building. The Black future is rooted in sovereignty. And I think we have the more innate ability to do that more than any others because we also bring forth life. But I think we mother each other and the earth in so many different ways, both biological and not, that quite frankly, I think for us to get anywhere and for us to be saved and be better, it will always involve women. And I think most especially for myself, I think centering Black women in that and how we uplift and treat us will be a strong indicator about what the rest of the world will be like for everyone else.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Cicely, and thank you to the National Black Food Justice Alliance for your continued support.
Thank you for having me.
Let's hear from Ms. Valerie Hill-Rawls, Executive Director of Eco Womenist Institute Southeast.
Thank you so much to Cicely Garrett for joining us today and sharing her deep wisdom and unwavering commitment to Black food justice. Her words remind us that we are not simply asking, we are claiming what we've always cultivated together. At EWISE and through our BRAIDEd program, we are committed to planting seeds of change, organizing in solidarity, and building a future where Black women and girls stand firmly rooted in sovereignty. Every workshop, every gathering, every acre reclaimed is a step towards a world where our communities thrive on our own terms. When we talk about braiding our stories, we're talking about weaving together the wisdom of our ancestors, the resilience of the present, and our hopes for the generations yet to come. This is about radical possibilities. It's about making justice and joy a lived reality, not just for us, but for those who will walk these paths after us. To everyone listening, stay rooted. Let your roots reach deep into the soil of your heritage and your dreams. Keep braiding your stories into a great tapestry of our shared future. Together, we're not just reimagining sovereignty, we're living it, organizing for it, and ensuring that the harvest we sow today becomes the freedom and flourishing of our daughters and our granddaughters who will experience that tomorrow. I invite you to stay tuned for upcoming episodes of the BRAIDEd podcast and to share these conversations within your roots of influence. Let's keep planting, let's keep organizing, and braiding our stories so that the freedom, justice, and the joy we're cultivating today become the everyday lived experiences of tomorrow. I invite you to keep planting, whether it's seeds in the soil or ideas in your community. Keep organizing, keep building, keep believing in the power of our collective action. Together, we're not just envisioning Black futures, we're creating them, grounded in justice, joy, and the radical possibilities of sovereignty. Until next time, keep planning, keep organizing, and keep building futures where justice and joy are more than a vision, they're our legacy.
Today, we've tilled tough ground: policy, history, inequality. But we've also named our power, because understanding the legal frameworks and economic barriers is the first step toward dismantling them. We're not asking for a handout. We're demanding a harvest we've already sown. And while they stall, we keep planting, organizing, and building Black futures rooted in sovereignty. So whether you're in the fields, the courtroom, or the community, keep planning, keep pushing, and keep showing up, because the harvest is coming. And just like that, we've reached the end of Season 1 of BRAIDEd. This season has been about truth-telling, legacy building, and lifting up the voices shaping the futures of food, land, and liberation. From legislation to lived experience, we've tilled the soil. And now we pause to let what we've planted take root. But we're not done. We're already looking ahead to Season 2 in 2026, where we'll welcome new voices, deeper dialogue, and special guests from the BRAIDEd cohort, leaders growing equity and power in their communities from the ground up. Until then, keep sowing, keep organizing, and keep believing in the harvest to come. I'm Keionna Thomas, and this has been BRAIDEd, brought to you by the Eco-Womanist Institute Southeast.